You seem surprised. Did you really think the power of friendship would triumph?
Yeah, kinda did, honestly.
Whatever else can be said about Shin Megami Tensei IV, it was a return to form after Nocturne and the bizarreness of Strange Journey, pulling down the core components one would find in a Megami Tensei game, and playing it relatively safe for the fourth outing. Its not quite sequel, Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse, feels like a response to shying away from embracing the more unusual direction of its predecessors by launching its own wave of criticisms at the series' traditions that it's clung to for nearly 30 years. The mere fact that this game exists, let alone that it's as jovial and thoughtful a JRPG experience one can find on the 3DS, is nothing short of astonishing. But just how good is Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse? And does it surpass the lofty heights of its predecessor? Let's find out.
Akira, I want to protect them all, no matter the cost.
Apocalypse takes place around the third act of the original Shin Megami Tensei IV's Neutral Route, with Flynn rallying the people of Tokyo under a banner of revolution, seeking to liberate the world from demons and angels, a message that's broadcast on TV for all the people of Tokyo to see, including a young boy and girl named Nanashi and Asahi. The two of them double down on their efforts to become better hunters, only for a training mission to go awry. An ambush caused by a powerful demon leaves most of your friends dead before you shortly follow them, being greeted in the afterlife by an old god named Dagda, who brings you back to life and lends you his power in exchange for becoming his god slave. So yeah, on the surface, Apocalypse appears to be a retread of the territory that Megami Tensei typically tackles in terms of broad strokes, i.e. Tokyo being in a state of ruin while several factions fight for power. In this case, a group of deities called the Divine Powers that plan on hatching an egg to seek salvation in a new universe join the typical law and chaos groups, and fighting over what remains of humanity, of which the main character must choose between one of the three presented paths before them, in the case of Apocalypse 4, that culminates in them committing deicide. What's interesting about this incarnation of such series is how Apocalypse is, for lack of a better description, the game that Fire Emblem Fates could and should have been, in that the story brings to the forefront and raises questions about the problems with certain series traditions, namely with the main components of the not-so-subtle controlling of Dagda serving as a means of criticizing the series' unique interpretation of humanism.
You know that thing that idiots on the internet claim to be in favor of when asked about gender equality because
the feminists
have ruined feminist theory or third-wave feminism has ruined it or something, without understanding the core differences, let alone the history that informs the two philosophies. This review is gonna have a fun comment section, isn't it? This is what, 10-15 seconds of how long of a review?
In layman's terms, humanism stems from the notion that humanity's values should stem from rational thought, from humans rather than the reliance on a higher power. It's a philosophy that informs quite a number of design choices that Megami Tensei has made throughout the years, like how so many games in the series conclude with the battle against a god. After all, what greater manner can humanity show how far they've come than with a showdown against a deity, a being who, by their very existence and power, should be the one to guide humanity. For all intents and purposes, Dagda making Nanashi their puppet with how they can manipulate their actions and body and how their power is what's keeping them alive is an extreme take on the main character's tendency to heavily rely on the power of the demons and angels in order to fend for themselves and further their own goals. How removing them from the equation would only go to show how helpless humanity would be without them. They are a necessary evil for life in Tokyo, a sentiment that's best exemplified in two particular scenes. The first being where a seal is unlocked that prevents your party from using their abilities in battle, thus making them useless.
And the only reason the main character's Horde of Hellspawn doesn't go wild is because their David Puppet Master provides them a loophole. Which brings me to the other moment.
Without wishing to spoil in explicit detail, it is an incredibly effective late game battle, which only goes to show how much of a necessity the various deities, demons, and higher beings are currently needed to help humanity reach new heights. That said, Dagda's motivations are slightly hypocritical, as he complains about the Divine Powers playing humanity like pawns. It's using the main character like his own piece on the chessboard, moving them around to further their own goals. It certainly doesn't ruin the point Apocalypse is trying to make, mostly because it's equally busy trying to point its other fingers at the problems with the main protagonist. By which I mean the protagonist from Shin Megami Tensei IV. The way Flynn is elevated to by the people in one of the three main groups' own account, a messiah, can't help but feel like a mockery the typical choice to glorify the main mute in Megami Tensei, heck in most JRPGs, as being the only individual to cause any sort of change in a world filled with thousands, if not millions of people perfectly capable of making their own rational decisions. One could argue that the people of Tokyo are merely shifting their fate, and thus the reliance on higher power to selfishly make the world better for themselves, onto someone human rather than something holy, thus continuing to live their lives with a being that they consider to be higher than themselves, telling them what they should strive for instead of deciding for themselves. It's this level of introspection hidden under the surface that gives Apocalypse a far more intelligent and self-aware style to its writing, and makes the story all the more enjoyable, though this isn't overstated as criticism as a justification for completely upending the series' traditions. It may challenge these notions, but it doesn't shy away from acknowledging its strong points, serving more as a cautionary reminder than an outright condemnation. And it's definitely not above having some fun along the way when making that point. The characters aren't so stoic in their mannerisms, nor is the tone as serious as 4 was. There isn't any moment as disturbing as discovering what the Reds were made out of. Apocalypse takes a more lighthearted approach, full of humorous lines and pop culture references, ranging from Sesame Street to Dark Souls. However, while the writing can border on brilliant with the aforementioned introspective look at the series' often tired traditions, and the humor can hit hard on occasion, there are some later moments that stick out for the wrong reasons, namely with the arc of one of the two main love interests leaning a bit too heavily on show don't tell, when the other of whose spontaneous romantic interest in the main character could have used a greater form of explanation.
Then again, who are we kidding? Nanashi clearly only has eyes for Jun Kurosu. I mean, what's not to love?
Putting its occasional out-of-nowhere romance aside, Apocalypse has some deceptively detailed characters, all brimming with personality, in stark contrast to 4's boiled-down trio of archetypical cardboard cutouts. What helps is that the cast has been upsized, lending itself to more opportunities to let the many characters' personalities spark and bounce off one another, with some stellar arcs and poignant moments to boot out of their boundless chemistry. It's a surprisingly strong showcase for an area where the main games tend to suffer. Then again, that's Apocalypse in a nutshell. A genuinely solid showcase that sheds light on so many aspects of its predecessor's design, with shocking results. Much of the aforementioned Fire Emblem fates, Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse shares many of its predecessors' demon-fusing, skill-whispering, app-adding domain dungeon-crawling tendencies, more focused on finding various tweaks and fixes to its design that helps make the overall experience all the more exhilarating. For one, the opening hour is nowhere near as tedious as it was in 4, nor are the AI partners the largely detrimental drag-alongs that they were before, each posting their share of useful skills to learn and use, ranging from boosting stats to curing status problems. Even more helpful is that, after several turns of staying alive, they can interrupt an enemy's turn and score some extra hits along the way, all the while putting a literal smile on your party members' faces. It may not be as big a game changer as the press turn system was in Nocturne, but the two work well together, the press turn system being effectively designed for the regular encounters when exploring, while your partners provide a helpful breather during some of the more difficult bosses. What was already one of the more refined JRPGs to date doubles down on a streamlining strategy by allowing you to simply recruit the same demons after fusing them without going through the same process of bargaining with them every time, or paying a pretty hefty fee for pulling them out from the compendium, which makes filling out every fusion combination and finding the best combination of skills far less stressful and costly than before. This isn't to say that Apocalypse is all coddling and no challenge. It walks a very thin line between presenting difficult encounters with its multiple battles of the regular and boss variety, to say nothing about recruiting the former, while still being overall forgiving, with Dogda instantly reviving the player in the very spot they were killed, a far more convenient option to the alternative. Then again, if you are a glutton for punishment who likes having a couple hours worth of progress purposely wiped away because of an ambush that managed to destroy your entire party without a chance to counter or escape, well, the option's there. The dungeon design, at least for the new ones, falls far more into intricate territory than before, while still making them more manageable to navigate thanks to the map's clearer interface, making it far more clear as to where the goal is for a given mission. By which I mean that you can simply check the general area of where you need to go via the bottom screen. Even the last two dungeons, elaborate as they become with their dozens of different rooms and half-dozen floors to explore, never makes going from the bottom to the top and vice versa an inconvenient trip. On the whole, there isn't much in Apocalypse to object to. There are minor inconveniences, like the almost guaranteed reinforcements with hordes getting tiresome after the third or fourth round, especially given how costly multi-opponent hitting magic can be, or the Jade Dagger largely being a secondary means of cutting down obstacles and opening chests with a time limit attached to its usage outside of the final dungeon. However, none of them detract from the sheer satisfaction that comes from overcoming the mountainous amount of challenge that Apocalypse provides. If there are any true faults, it's that Apocalypse's tweaks and changes fail to hide the fact that its design is very much rooted in the same ground as Shin Megami Tensei IV, right down to returning to the same dungeons featured in that game. However, when you're growing vegetables after adding in more nutrients to such fine soil, it shouldn't come as a surprise by the bounty of the eventual harvest. Speaking of recycling, while Apocalypse retains much of the minimalist presentation of 4 for creatures and characters, the new dungeons they occupy and explore respectively featured some rather stunning locales. Less than impressive are the occasional stills that substitute for animated cutscenes, which blend less than cohesively with this radically different rendition of the denizens and deities of Tokyo. On the sound side, the voice actors, fantastic as they may be,
What do you know about any of this? You'd never be brave enough to stand up like she just did. You always go on about your code and your strength, but when have you done anything but bitch?
are all too often drowned out by the audio mixing making the background music overpower their performances, though thankfully the various audio levels can be adjusted to fix this. However, don't turn the music down too much, since Apocalypse boasts an immaculate mixture of energetic battle motifs and heavy-hitting tunes that simply sound incredible, perfectly matching the cruel and frantic society of Tokyo, where children have to fight among the more experienced for a chance to survive, and death can come at a moment's notice.
September marks the beginning of the time where a lot of your Game of the Year contenders tend to crop up, and Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse is among the earliest the season has to offer. Not just a high mark for the series, not just a worthy successor to 4 that surpasses it in almost every regard, but a contender for the best JRPG released on the 3DS and best JRPG released all year. Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse earns a 9.5 out of 10. That's all for now, folks. Until next time, game on, my friends.
Noticing me? Take off your headphones, I'm a nice guy! How will you not know that if you don't take them off to hear me tell you that?